And yeah, it's good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's great to see so many of you here in the morning, even after probably a late night last night. All right, so as we said, I want to talk a bit about helping open communities thrive and my experience in helping communities over the last 17 years to strive in the open. And I hope some of that will be useful for your work here around C++ or other areas where you are involved. So first of all, disclaimer. I'm going to talk a bit about history of KDE and so on. And of course, all of this is from a particular vantage point and necessarily not the whole story, right? But I hope the important parts. So let's start a bit about me, why I'm talking to you about this. So for the past 17 years, as I said, I've been contributing to a number of free and open projects, both software projects as well as open knowledge projects. After I studied computer science, I've been contributing to KDE for most of that time. And since 2011, I'm on the board of the nonprofit behind KDE, KDE EV. And I was the past president, and I'm currently the vice president of that organization. That's my volunteer life, and most of what I'm going to talk about. In my work life, I work for Wikimedia on Wikipedia's knowledge graph called Wikidata. So if you ever need data for your project about the world, this is the place to go. And I also, in my volunteer capacity, support the VideoLAN people. So these are the guys behind VLC, the video player with the cone, basically advising them in governance stuff and so on. So, and I believe this gives me a fairly good picture, good view into the picture of these communities. And through all of this work, while I study computer science and I'm a rather technical person, most of the contributions I've made to those projects are not on the technical side, but more on the community governance, strategy, and product management side. So to give you some context, I need to talk a bit about KDE and give you a bit of a recap on history of KDE. So KDE started in 1996. It was started by a guy called Matthias Ettrich. And he sent this email, or rather newsgroup post, that you can still find online today, titled, "New Project, Cool Desktop Environment, Programmers Wanted." We cringe a bit at the cool today, which is why it's no longer the cool desktop environment, but KDE. We've grown. And it's a rather long post, but he is trying to rally people around the idea of building a desktop environment. And specifically, he calls out stuff like wanting to build a GUI for end users. So he writes, the idea is to create a GUI for the end user, somebody who wants to browse the web with Linux, write some letters, and play some nice games. Specifically, he's talking about his girlfriend, but basically, he wants more people to be able to work on Linux in a nice environment. Also important, he talks about, already in the email, about Qt, which he calls a very nice, easy-to-use, powerful C++ library. And he's really trying to get people on board. He writes, I don't have the time to do this all alone, also since Lix is my main project, the LaTeX editor. But a thing like a desktop environment can easily be cut into lots of parts. There's very probably a part for you too. If you want to learn some X programming, why not do the small, neat projects for KDE? And already here, this is going to become more important later, he's talking about KDE as a place to learn. And he ends this with, I admit the whole thing sounds like a bit like a fantasy, but it's very serious from my side. everyone I'm talking to in the net would love a somewhat cleaner desktop, and Qt is the chance to realize that. So let us try in our rare spare time and just do it. That was kind of the attitude Matthias brought into this. So what to take away from this? First of all, Matthias was a rather unusual founder in that he started this project, but then was fairly hands-off for the rest of the project. Also, KDE has always considered itself a rather technically excellent and pragmatic community. It's been close to Qt from the start. It's been considering itself a place to learn from the start, and it's always put end users as the focus. Not too long after that already, KDEV, the nonprofit behind it, was founded. And it was established as an organization that supports the KDE community in legal, financial, organizational matters. Like having someone who can sign some papers for a conference, for example, to host. Or to be the party in the KDE Feel Good Foundation to secure Qt staying free and open. So, and for many years, KDEV has very explicitly not gotten itself involved in the development. It has not paid for development for a very long time. It has not tried to influence the development, but always supported the KDE community to do the development it wanted to do. This has changed a bit in recent years, but that was very important at the beginning. And over all these years, as an organization, it has provided a lot of continuity for the project and the community behind it. Now, history goes on. KDE 1 is released. Isn't it beautiful? It's really. Anyone here by chance who has used KDE 1? Nice. Very nice. And we move on to KDE 2. Any KDE 2 users? Nice. More than I expected. This is really cool. We move on to KDE 3. We get a bit more presentable. KDE 3, who of you? Yeah, cool. And KDE 3 was kind of a crossroads for KDE. When the KDE 3 series came to an end, Qt was moving to Qt 4. Major breaking changes, major rethinking of what is going to happen. So, and this is roughly the time I joined KDE. Now, why? Why did I get to KDE? I've always been interested in technical things and computers from rather early on, and I always loved the idea of being able to build something, to tinker with something, and the idea of creating something in the open. And when I was studying computer science, at some point I was like, this Windows thing really not doing it. There has to be something better. And at that time, Ubuntu was the rage. So I was like, OK, let's give this a try. I installed it and tried it for an hour and was like, it's not bad, but we're just not clicking. And then I looked around a bit more, and people were saying, like, yeah, there's also this other thing called Kubuntu, which is basically the same but different. So I was like, OK, fine, let's try that. And I installed it, used it for an hour, and was like, oh my god, my mind is blown. This is amazing. This is the thing. And the thing that hooked me was integration. So here, for example, you see KDE's Messenger app at that time, Compete. And in Compete, you could say, hey, to this Messenger contact, get their address from the address book and send them an email with the email program. Or from the file manager, you could say, send this file to that to that contact and copied. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Coming from Windows with shareware, freeware, all this integration was just did not exist. So I was hooked. And like, yeah, okay, I'm going to use this. This is great. And then I talked to this guy, Sven, who I was studying with, and he was like, hey, you're using KDE software, right? I was like, yeah. I'm doing marketing for Amarok, their music player. Why don't you help us? Like, okay, I can do this. I can help you write release announcements and so on. And at some point, he said, like, you know what? In 2 weeks, there's Linux Tag in Berlin, and you're coming with us. I was like, oh my God. I have no idea what I'm doing, but there we were. And funnily enough, people who came to the booth were like asking, all of them were asking the 5 same questions. I had this figured out quickly, so that was good. But the much more important thing that happened there is that I got to meet a lot of other KDE contributors for the first time in person. And that's basically what made me stay. It's the people in that community, right? And over the years, people having faith in me and letting me try stuff, letting me also fail at some things. And through that, learning a ton. So for example, today, I would not have my day job without all the things that I learned in KDE. My computer science degree is great, but it did not get me my job. So in KDE, we say, come for the code, stay for the community. And that's really, I think, a core thing that is true for many communities. So here you can see our group photo from our last conference in Thessaloniki in Greece. It was great. OK, back in history. KDE 3. I joined, and that was around the time when KDE had quite some troubled years, I would say. Because over the course of a few years, many things came together. We were moving from a central SVN repository to Git. Very decentralized. Every program had their own Git repository, of course, as opposed to how it was before in a monolithic SVN repository, which meant that people who worked together before in the same code base started drifting apart. Qt moved from Qt 3 to Qt 4, as I was saying earlier. KDE 4 was very much a revolution, not an evolution. So we basically threw a lot of the work we've done before away and started basically from scratch with very good ideas and intentions and visions behind it. But let's say the execution of that initially and the way the public expected it to be did not match. People were not happy at the beginning, which of course is not great for the people contributing to that, right? If it's like, why did you destroy what I have been using for so long? Why did you break everything? Why did you remove everything? Why can I no longer do this? On top of that, the initial vision that we had, that Matthias set out as a desktop environment for end users on Linux, we kind of checked that off, but also not really. And then questions came like, does anyone even need a desktop anymore? Does anyone care, or is everyone going to move to mobile phones anyway? And then there was a lot of push to change the framing of what KDE is, from KDE is the software that we release to KDE is the community that releases that software. All of that was leading to I would say, a rather unhappy community, a very stressed community, a very splintering community, and a bit of an identity crisis, if you want. So what do you do then to not have everyone freak out, basically? How do you keep people together? And what we did are 3 things over several years. The first of which was to create a manifesto, to basically define who are we, what defines us, what does it mean to be KDE. And we wrote down values in that manifesto after a lot of discussion. And we ended up with open governance, free software, inclusivity, innovation, common ownership. That was very important for us. Everyone in KDE should be able to commit to every piece of the code, for example, and an end-user focus. But that's, of course, not enough. We also had to explain, OK, what's the benefit of actually coming to KDE with your project? And we called out things like, you get to make use of KDE's infrastructure. You get to be a part of a large community that does, for example, translations, bug fixing, bug triage for you, and much more. You get the representation of the nonprofit behind it. You get more visibility through KDE's promotion, and so on. And of course, something like that doesn't just come with benefits, but also commitments. So if someone came like, hey, I have this project and I want to come to KDE with that project, I want to make it a KDE project, we also had some expectations towards them. Now, for the first time, actually written down and agreed upon. Like, respect our code of conduct, be aligned with our vision and mission, do not have a mandatory contributor licensing agreement, have some technical requirements checked off, like if you have an online service, then our sysadmin team needs access to that, and stuff like that. And the same for copyrights and trademarks and patents. And this basically, for the first time, gave us a shared understanding of should this project join KDE and what are the expectations we have towards that project, as opposed to 500 people having 500 different interpretations of what it means to be a KDE project. Very helpful, also very painful. So that was nice and useful, but it didn't fix all our problems because we still weren't able to pin down, OK, why do we exist now that we've kind of achieved, but not really, Matthias' initial vision. So a bit later, we started looking at, OK, what's our new vision? What's our new mission? And we ended up, after a lot of painful discussion, with KDE envisions a world in which everyone has control over their digital life and enjoys freedom and privacy. So one important thing to note here is that, for example, it doesn't talk about a desktop. But it does talk about being in control of your digital life, freedom, privacy, right? Which opened up KDE beyond this, KDE is a desktop. No, it's a community that, among many other things, makes a desktop. And then, since this is very lofty, they're like, OK, how do we do this? How do we give people control over their digital life and freedom and privacy? So we said, KDE has taken on the mission to create software products which give users control, freedom, and privacy. We give them an excellent experience, user experience, and quality software. We give that to them regardless of their location, background, abilities, operating system, and device. And we are here to promote free and open source software and free and open source ecosystem. So again, this gave us much more clarity and also told some people, like, yeah, OK, what you want to do is maybe not what you get to do in KDE. So after we had that, it was really helpful, and people kept referring to this. Hey, but according to our vision, we said we would do this, or we said we wouldn't do that. But still, it doesn't give us, okay, what do we do now? What do we do? What do we do together as one community, as opposed to everyone doing their own thing in their own little corner of this massive project? So we set out to set goals and socialize them. And this basically meant we would make a call for people to make proposals for what KDE should focus on over the next 2 to 3 years. And anyone, if they're a KDE contributor or not, could come and make a suggestion, make a proposal. And after some time, we would have a discussion period where people could ask questions, refine the proposals, and maybe say, hey, I don't think this is a good idea, and here's why. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this. Or here's how I think this should be done differently. This should be done, how this could be improved. And then, after all of that, we had a list of potential goals for KDE for the next years, and we set out to do a vote among active contributors for the top 3. And we've gone through this process for the third time now. And initially in 2017, the outcome of that first vote was top-notch usability and productivity for basic software. So hey, let's make all our software more usable and more productive for people. Privacy software, let's look at privacy issues in our software. Let's make people more aware of the privacy implications of doing something. And last but not least, streamlined onboarding of new contributors to make it easier for people to join. Now, the interesting thing that happened here is that of those initial 3 winning goals, 2 of them were proposed by people from outside KDE. And this was very much an aha moment for me, because this whole process gave them the ability to say, oh, I have something, I have an idea, I think this is good. And I'm willing to put time into making it happen. Which before that they didn't feel empowered to do. And since then, they have become some of the most prolific contributors to KDE. So I consider it quite a success. So we've repeated this in 2019 with the winners being consistency, so making all of our software more consistent, Wayland, getting ready for Wayland, and apps, which is, okay, let's work towards making it clearer that people can use individual apps from KDE, also outside the KDE Plasma desktop. And the current ones voted in last year, KDE for all, so this is all about accessibility, improvements, sustainable software, energy efficiency, and more. And last but not least, automate and systematize internal processes. So basically, all the things that a community does ad hoc sometimes, let's automate some of that. Let's not have a single point of failure person, things like that. So while all of these processes were rather painful to go through, this is really, really helpful for keeping a project as large as KDE together and united and working towards something that all people, like most people in a community agreed, like, yes, let's focus on that. And of course, this is not all that KDE does, but it sets a focus and it makes it clear, hey, if you want to contribute in one of those areas, that's a good idea. So after those rather difficult years, where's KDE today? We have clearer goals. I would argue we have better software. We have partnerships to get our software directly to end users, so this are hardware partnerships. We have stayed true to our values that we laid out many years ago. We have a more cohesive community. And we're able to much more clearly articulate why we exist, what we do, and why we do it. And you can see this, for example, here in these KDE for You pages as just one example, which is a website where you can find specific pages for certain groups and how KDE can help them. So, for example, we have KDE for activists or KDE for students, for travelers, and so on. So these are the pages that tell you, hey, here are the things from KDE that would be interesting for you. Right now, there are about 600 active developers, and I would say as many in non-developer roles, so organizing events and things like that, with a size of about 50 million lines of code, 80% roughly of which are C++. KDE software today is used in lots of places, like CERN, NASA, in Hollywood, for example, in the shooting of Gravity, Avatar, The Hobbit. Steam Deck is using Plasma on the Valve is using Plasma on their Steam Deck devices, which you can turn into from the gaming console. You can connect it to a large screen and have basically a desktop. That's Plasma, and many more. In terms of most successful applications, I would say Plasma, Krita, our painting application, KDE Live, which is amazing for video editing, Kate, our text editor, Shigrampi, a learning suite for kids, KDE Connect, which connects your phone to your computer, and KDE Frameworks, more on the library side. So, and what is KDE not? And I feel like C++ is in a similar situation. KDE is not the latest hype of the day. KDE rarely runs after the latest big tech hype, be that Bitcoin, large language models, or what have you. If you're someone in that, then KDE is probably not the project for you. And I feel like C++ is maybe also not the project for you. So instead, we're focusing on what actually improves lives. And sometimes this might be one of those technologies, right? But so far, but the problem with some of that is that it's sucking up a lot of the energy and a lot of the good people that may be able to contribute to something, in my opinion, more meaningful. And I think a clearly people-centered vision, in the case of KDE, without a profit motive behind it, can act as a nice antidote to still get people interested in this and contribute to it. So, over these years, I've learned a lot of lessons, some of them painful. So here's me trying to tell you about them so you don't have to go through the pain. First of all, so I'm going to talk a bit about lessons for you as an individual, for your community, and then for society. Let's start with you as an individual. Do take care of yourself. Do not make any of this the center of your life, the center of your universe. This is probably the hardest for me to actually live by. And one of the things that happens is train your successors. Have a succession plan. If you're gone, life happens. Who is going to continue the work that you've been doing? Think about that. Talk to that person. Talk to those people. Or, even better, do not be the single point of failure for something in the first place. Again, very hard, especially in an open community with resources. And one thing I've noticed in a lot of communities is that the leaders in those communities sometimes tend to have this urge to be the first to answer a question, the first to answer to a bug report, the first person to review a merge request. If this is you, try not to do that. Try to give others some space to be the first. Try to let them answer that support question. Try to let them do a first code review, and then go in. That's one way to grow people into the roles you need them in. But you also need to be able to let go, have patience, and this is hard. And one mantra that we have in Wikimedia that has helped me with this is good enough for now, safe enough to try. You might have worries about something, but it's good enough. And yes, we can try this, the world will not end. And this cuts down on discussions quite a lot, because a lot of times people discuss about the last 10% that maybe do not matter that much. Try it. Another thing I've realized over the years is that free and open projects are kind of the ultimate leadership tests, right? If you're in a leadership position in one of those projects, you're really forced to rally people behind you. You basically almost never can tell them what to do. You need to convince them, and you need to engage them. And one way to think about this is that people need 3 things to have fun in a task, in a job, in a position. And that's mastery, autonomy, and purpose. Mastery, you need to be able to feel that you can do the task. It might be a little challenging, but you need to be able to do it. If you're completely lost and overwhelmed, it's not fun. You're not gonna do it. Autonomy. You need to have a bit of space to do your thing. You can't constantly have someone micromanage you and tell you what to do and what not to do. Surprise. And last thing, purpose. Why am I doing this? Is this interesting? Is this useful? Is this meaningful? And the cool thing about open projects, most of the time, the purpose piece is just check. And in general, trust people to positively surprise you. Take a chance on people. Trust falls are hard, but let people positively surprise you. Another thing, if you ever find yourself in some sort of leadership, maintainership, whatever position in an open project, it can be very lonely. It can be isolating. And what really helps is to find someone in a similar position in another project. Someone you can go to and say, like, oh my God, they're driving me nuts today. Or, I have this problem, I do not know how to deal with it. What do you think? Or just, I need to vent for 10 minutes, and you need to listen to me. Because often you can't necessarily do this with the people in your community. So find someone in adjacent communities who can be that person for you. Now, let's look at the community scale. For communities, culture matters. And as a community, you're advertising your culture everywhere. This, for example, is a group photo from the Wikidata conference in Dublin earlier this year. And one of the things Wikidata does every year at their conferences is hand out the cone heads. And then they do a treasure hunt through the city. So for the day, first day of the conference, the city is filled with people with cone heads running around, which is amazing. And you get so many people asking you, like, why are you doing this? What's the deal? What's the deal with your code? And then you get into a conversation like, yeah, we're working on this project and we're doing a treasure hunt. Can you help us with this question? Do you know where this and that is? It's very nice. Or here, magnet fishing. Or here from Wikimedia. Wikimedia has the Wikimedia Cuteness Association. And this is Query Boo, one of the members of the Cuteness Association. So basically, whenever there's a conference, people bring their plushies, and there are group photos of the plushies and travel pictures and so on. It's very nice. Oh, here, this is a screenshot from Wikidata, the project I'm working on at Wikimedia. And Wikidata has these data pages, basically. And everything that Wikidata describes has a unique identifier. Random. Well, not quite so random. You can see that there are nerds behind this project. Douglas Adams, for example, is Q42. There are more. Or here, which is my favorite edit on Wikipedia. And if you want more of these, I can highly recommend following an account on Twitter or Instagram called Depth of Wikipedia, where Annie is posting a ton of really cool pictures. So what happened here is there was an article with this picture, and it said, Piper Kerr, a member of the Scottish National Arctic Expedition, placed the bagpipes for an indifferent penguin, March 1904. Okay. And then someone I know, makes an edit and says, Piper Kerr, on the right. I mean, it's important to specify this, right? There's a ton of this stuff in Wikipedia. I can highly recommend Depth of Wikipedia. It's lovely. So, again, people come for the code, people stay for the community, and stuff like this, your culture. And besides all the things I showed you, another way how you advertise your community and how you advertise the culture of your community are discussions, right? If you're discussing in the open, you're basically never just discussing with the person you're discussing with. There are a ton of bystanders who will take that into account in understanding what community this is, what's allowed here, what kind of tone you're setting, and how you interact with each other. And here, initial tone setting of a community is especially important. So if you ever are in a position to start a new community, think about what kind of community you want, because the initial setting is very hard to get around later in the life of that community. A community needs a clearly articulated why. This is, as I was explaining earlier with KDE, right? The reason why we went through all this pain of defining our vision, our mission, our goals, to really have that and have that agreed upon. Because you can't just dictate that from above if you want buy-in for such a thing. You need to create this collaboratively with people, and the goal or the end result, the artifact that you create, like our vision, is great. But just as important, and maybe even more important, is the process how you got there. All the discussions you had getting there, as painful as they might be. And for this, it can be, if you're going through such processes, it can be immensely valuable if you have someone lead those processes who is not invested in a particular outcome. So I, for example, was leading the process around the creation of the vision for KDE. But I didn't care about what we end up with. I cared that we have one. But the details of what is in it, I didn't care about as much, and that really helped in the discussions. Speaking of discussions, one thing that has helped me immensely from nonviolent communication training is this mantra of listen to understand, not to respond. Oftentimes, and just as much in real-world discussions as in mailing list posts or on chat or whatever, is we read, we listen to be able to respond, instead of listening to understand what the other person has to say. Try not to do that. It really makes a difference in discussions and in how that other person feels heard or does not feel heard by you. One thing I try to live by is people should never be surprised by what I do. And that means there should have been a time before any major thing where we talked about it, where we discussed it, where people felt like, yeah, okay, I could have my say, I could give my input, and I was heard. And the painful thing here is, especially in open communities, you have to say something so many times you can't hear it yourself anymore. You've basically got to preach it for people to hear it, and do not expect people to hear it the first time you say something, or you announce something, or you think you have agreed on something. Can be very frustrating sometimes, but it's good to keep in mind. And one thing that helps with this is having a regular agreed upon and advertised way to stay up to date, right? My first point was, do not make this the center of your universe. And that also means for many people, not being able to stay up to date on everything that's happening in your community. So what I try to do in communities where I'm involved in is get them to the point where they have some sort of regular update of what's happening that's short and concise. So for example, for Wikidata, we have this weekly summary, which is just once a week for the past 11 years, 12 years almost, message that people get sent by email and on Wiki and on social networks with anything that's important. And for KDE, we have Nate, who publishes these blog posts this week in KDE, which is also trying to summarize the most important things that have been going on in KDE in that week. And that's a nice and easy way to stay up to date also for people who are maybe just occasional contributors or who really do not have the time to stay up to date with everything that's happening in your potentially large community. And then communities need rituals, and rhythms. So this can be stuff like birthdays, awards you give out, conferences like this one. Immensely helpful. So, for example, for Wikidata, we celebrate the birthday, where people come together, and there's birthday presents that people have, like they code little things, they write documentation, and so on. It's really lovely. There's cake. Cake is always good. Or for KDE, we have the Academy Awards, where every year we give out awards to people who have done something significant for the KDE community. And then the really lovely part, I think, about this is that we do this at our annual conference, and then everyone gets to sign these awards. So you have an award to take home with signatures from people in the community, and it's a really nice thing. Now, to make stuff like that happen, you need people who are connectors, right? The people who say, hey, you should talk to that person. Hey, you should come to that event. You should get together and do this. And those people are invaluable. So anyone who organized this conference, thank you. So if you don't have them in your project, see if you can find them, right? See if you can find ways to bring those people to your to your community who bring people together. And as we've seen with the goal process, right, where in the first round, 2 of the 3 winning goals came from people who had not made significant contributions to KDE before. Entry barriers are killer, and in my experience, so much of that entry barrier is in people's heads, and not feeling like they're good enough, not feeling they are allowed to contribute to your project, not feeling that they can make a difference. So think about ways how you can give people that, allow people to join, allow people to bring in their ideas and so on. All right, now let's look more at the society level. I think we need a lot more tinkering, and I think you're the type of people who are very much in that space. So please go out and get more people around you who might not be the type to tinker with something. And it doesn't even have to be tech, right? It can be knitting, I don't know. It, I think, really makes a difference in how people think about their life and how much agency they believe they have in society. Because I feel like we're moving more and more to a society that is take what you're given, as opposed to take something and make it work for you. And I don't think that's necessarily healthy for us. I think we need a lot more open infrastructure to build on. And I thought this was very insightful in that, where it says, for every shitty user-hostile change to a big tech service, there exists a small independent service that could offer a viable replacement, but continues to be ridiculed by the very users who complain about the shitty big tech service change. So next time some proprietary big tech service gets on your nerves, think about this and think about supporting alternatives where you are more in control. Which brings me to the next point, is about all of these open projects tend to be held together by a very small number of people, and especially if it looks different from afar. So, for example, VLC is used by a gazillion people, but their team is super small. And that puts a lot of strain on that team, right? So yeah. Keep that in mind when you're making demands or have expectations towards those projects that they might not be able to fulfill, but where you can help support them. Because there's always something to do, and even a little thing like a thank you to your favorite project it helps a lot. I hope this gave you some insights into open communities and how you can help improve them, and I hope it was helpful. Thank you very much. time for questions. Yes, okay. Are there questions?
Hello.
Hi.
So you mentioned that the community needs a rhythm and also rituals, and that really piqued my interest, because what makes a good ritual for a community, and what is it that a ritual actually does?
Right. So what a good ritual is, I think, depends a bit on your community, of course. But I would say things that happen regularly, like anniversaries, are always good. Things where people come together in real life are always good. Occasions where you can somehow celebrate something are always good. And all of this, why are rituals good? Because I've noticed that if you don't have these regular points in time that give people a rhythm, things tend to flounder, and people tend to just move on instead of saying, hey, let's look back at what we have achieved over the last year, for example, or let's now take the time to reflect on what's coming, and what has happened, and plan what's coming. Yeah. So anything that has this regularity and reflective character tends to be helpful, I would say.
So it's like a renewal of the identity you have, basically.
Yeah, you could put it like that.
You also mentioned that also regularly meeting up in real life really helps facilitate a sense of identity. How do you say in general is like the difference from a purely online community to a let's say mixed community with mostly online but also offline meetings?
Yeah, I wish I had that meme here, but there's this GIF of two, I think it's bulldogs, who are barking at each other through a fence and being like really, and then the fence is removed and they're like, and it just personifies this. Hey, when you actually see the person and when you met them in real life, you have much more to go on, a much better understanding of who this person is. If you've shared a dinner with them, I don't know, than if you just know their name and their email address and exchange a chat message here and there, right? And those can also be very valuable communities, but I think you can elevate them if you can get people together in person.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right. There's some questions from the online world, and I'll, be asking of the first one. It's a bit of a serious question from Honey. As a woman, have you ever faced the problem of getting your voices heard, respectable of your technical competency? And if so, how do you deal with it?
Yes, but those were the communities I didn't stay in.
Hi.
Hi.
This is Kieran. Like a small question. Can you, maybe I missed, but I don't think so. Can you maybe talk a little bit about C++ usage there? So the standards, compilers, I don't know if everything is unit tested more or less, like if there's some heterogeneous devices targeted, whatever. I don't know anything about KDE. Thank you.
How KDE is using C++? Yes. So as I was saying, about 80% from a last check we did is C++ code, and largely through Qt. So Qt as the make C++ nicer, let's say.
And what standards can you use? Kind of how modern compilers can you target?
I cannot tell you that.
Thank you.
But maybe Ivan, if he's here. Yes, Ivan, do you have an answer to that question?
Okay, so the answer is depending on the project. Mainly the frameworks, so the libraries used to follow what Qt requires. So whatever can be used to compile the current version of Qt that works for frameworks. For other projects, we could go berserk and go for C++23 in 2017. It just depends.
Thank you, Ivan.
Being in the KDE community for all these years, how does the KDE community help you as a person? I'm sure you have a lot of learnings.
How the KDE community has helped me as a person?
How?
In countless of ways. So while I was studying, I spent way too much time on contributing to KDE, if you ask my mom. But the good thing about that was when I got a student's job next to my studies, I went to this company that does semantic web stuff. And I went to them, and they had advertised a usability tester position for a student for a few hours. And I did some usability testing for them. And then at some point, the boss came and like, no, let's not do this. I saw that you do all this community management stuff. We need someone who does developer outreach. And why don't you do that? It's like, cool. Sounds great. Yes, much more happy with that than usability testing. And that's how I met the guy who founded Wikidata and who was like, hey, I need someone who does, who knows how to manage communities, who knows how to talk to Wikipedians about this new project that's otherwise going to explode. And I was like, yeah, sure, I can do this. And none of that is anything I learned in my studies. So how did it help me? On the one hand, allowing me to do this, like having a space where I can learn this and where I can practice it. And on the other hand, also having a place where I can do this in the open and where people can recognize and see what I have done, and basically having that as my portfolio and saying like, yes, this person really knows what she's doing there, and this is going to be helpful for us.
So there's an interesting question, which so how does KDE, but also Wiki, like I think you work for the foundation of the Wikidata and Wikimedia. That's what your day job is. And how do like projects like KDE survive financially? And can you talk a bit about that side?
Yeah. So KDE is largely funded by donations by individuals. That can be one-off donations or regular donations. And then memberships in the nonprofit, supporting memberships, which can either be for individuals who pay €100 a year or more, depending on their choosing, to be a member of the association and support the project. And the same for businesses who then pay a bit more. Grants. So, for example, we had a grant from one of the German ministries to work on a project to get the German eco seal, the blauer Engel, for our PDF reader, Ocular. So KDE has its first software that has an eco seal from the blauer Engel. Ever, not just free software, but. so grants like that. And then a lot of the organizations around it, some of them put their people to work on stuff in KDE. So for example, Valve paid some people through consultancies, for example, to improve Plasma so it can be so it can do what they wanted to do on the Steam Deck. Yeah.
I think you already answered the question that I had, so I was wondering how the collaboration with external companies contributing to KDE and development or external or other things works, if it's all happy or if there's training, I don't know, with the vision that KDE has. How's your experience with that?
Yeah. So yes, I believe the ones we have are happy. That's why we have them. The supporting memberships in the nonprofit give these companies a seat on the advisory board and space at our annual conference and general good vibes about, hey, this is a company, just like here, who supports this community and who invests in this community. So those are the official KDE EV pieces. And then the companies who hire people to work on KDE, that's, of course, at the end of the day, just like any other contributor, right? But one with a lot more time and maybe some direction from their boss. But their contributions go through regular channels, just like any other contribution.
Thanks. Hi, long-term user, love KDE. Amazing. I want to ask a question more like from a point of, so I work at the commercial development and we have all the structure, like, you have a system supporting stuff and you have a management. And so how does all of this works in the open source community when everyone is just volunteering? So who assigns tasks, who maintains infrastructure? How does it all work together? Like, do you have informal leadership? Like, how is it? I'm very curious.
Yeah. It varies from project to project, I would say. For KDE, the only official representative body is the KDE EV, and from the membership of KDE EV, we elect a board that can, for example, sign contracts and stuff like that, and say, hey, yes, this is the location where we have Academy next year, or conference and stuff like that. But when it comes to the individual projects, a lot of it is meritocracy. If you do the work, you have more say. And if you've been contributing for a longer time, your word probably also counts more. Some KDE projects have official maintainers who then can, in case it's needed, make a decision like, this is what we're doing, this is not what we're doing. But rarely is that the person who has been voted into that position to have that power, but it's more, they've put in the work to be in that position. Yeah. And for Wikimedia, it's similar. You have administrators, for example, who get voted in, and you only get voted in if you can show that you have a track record of good work on the project, and so on.
Thank you. And one small question: why did you stop naming projects with K? Like, what happened?
Projects with K?
Yeah, like Conquer, Copit, and Amarok, and all of them.
I mean, we were the cool desktop environment, so the K as a. On top of that, KDE was founded in Tübingen in Germany, so K was. And for a long time, we stuck to the K. We've gotten over the K, almost. But yeah, it's one of those quirky things at the end of the day that I was talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hey, you said that in the beginning, the KDE Foundation resisted to fund projects. So I guess right now they do. But as soon as money is involved, you get a big trouble with communities, how to balance that, who gets money, who does not. How do you deal with that in the KDE community?
Yeah. So transparency is an important part. We've gone through a long process around making a living. Was the title, where we said, okay, one of the big issues we see is that people contributing to KDE can most of the time do this while they're studying, or if they have a really nice boss who allows them to do it on the side, or other such circumstances, right? And that is not sustainable, unfortunately. And we want people to stick around longer term, and that means giving them a base to live on, basically. So we went through discussions, okay, if we do this, where should we put money? What's meaningful? And the goals, for example, help with that, right? So now what we have is, I want to say four contractors who work on stuff like documentation, getting Framework 6 in shape for release, and packaging apps for app stores. All of which are tasks that are not super high on people's preference list, let's say. So it's not the, oh, someone is taking away something I would have liked to do most of the time. That also helps, yeah. But it's tricky to navigate, definitely, and that's one of the reasons why we stayed away from it for so long.
And do you have administration work that is paid in the foundation as well?
Yeah, so we have an assistant to the board who does an amazing job. Without her, we would be lost. So she does all the paperwork, accounting, stuff like that. And we've had someone to do that for, I want to say, 15 years or more. So that has been a much more regular thing, because it was very clear that the board does too many things, and this is not meaningful time for the board to do that work. We need them to do much more strategic work. The board still does way too many on the ground things, if you ask me, but that's also the reality of a nonprofit like that.
Yeah, but I guess it's very hard to balance that. Also, how much do you pay for such a valued job, as you described it? And also, like, making a living for a developer depends on where he lives, what he does. So it's very hard to decide who to give funds. Also, you have like influence from the companies, like you mentioned Valve. They will push their own directive, their own incentives. So it's very hard to balance that with the community. They might have different ideas and directions.
But that's with external companies pushing in some directions. That's a nice thing, right? They don't have more say in terms of I'm the company and I give money and that's why I get a say. It's more I'm paying someone to put time into it, and that's why I probably have more say, which can also be tricky, but is, I think, the better option.
But I guess you also run into the same issue you mentioned with the big tech companies who show away services the users wanted. You have companies contributing stuff and then abandon it because it didn't get a commercial success.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Well, you talked about onboarding, and I think that would be something interesting to get into. Like, how do you join KDE? How's your mentoring? How do you, manage that within your community?
Yeah. So we have basically two big routes, I would say. One is unstructured. One is very structured. The unstructured way is when you go to the KDE website, you will find Get Involved link, and that tells you different ways how you can get involved as a developer, as a translator, as a promo person, and so on. And then it's basically just joining and getting a feel for how things are going, and then seeing where you can help, and asking where you can help. There's really someone pushing you to the next step there, which is part of the issue I was talking about earlier, where people have this barrier in their head of not feeling like they're empowered to do that next step. And then the much more structured way are our mentoring programs. So we take part in Google Summer of Code. And we have our own similar program called Season of KDE, where so Google Summer of Code is a paid internship, basically. Season of KDE is less strict and not paid. But you do get a mentor by your side. You get a clear project that you can work on. And if you complete that project and your mentor says yes, then you get a certificate and a T-shirt at the end, which is usually nice for the people who are taking part in that. And you have a very clear, like, this is my mentor, this is the person I can go to if I have questions, this is the person who's going to be a bit on my toes to make sure I'm actually doing stuff. So depending on what you want and need, that are the two roads we have.
Thank you. I think we have a question.
Yes, thanks for the talk. Do you also have people who come to KDE after they retire from their jobs?
Probably. I'm inclined to say that's very rare, though, but should be more, maybe.
Well, people get older.
It's a thing. It's a thing. Yes.
I do think everyone is welcome to join a community. So,
yes.
There was a question about contributions to KDE from companies. And we have to have someone here from KDAB with Ivan. And I thought maybe Ivan wants to tell us a bit about the contributions that KDAB has made to KDE, and because I think that's like an interesting perspective to learn about.
Okay, so as the main issue with KDAB and KDE is that everybody who knows me from KDE and they hear KDAB, okay, so you're still working on the same thing, right? Because everybody thinks that KDE and KDAB is the same thing. And it's not helped by the fact that 1/3 of KDAB is KDE developers. So let's say it's a little bit fuzzy of distinction. And I would say that officially, KDAB contributed to KDE in various software development tools like kdevelop, Kate, obviously, HeapTrack, Clazy, the static analyzer, etc. And some of the things are a little bit more fuzzy. For example, David Forb, who has been the maintainer of KDE frameworks since before Lydia and I were born, he has been employed by KDAB for ages, and maintaining those frameworks was largely a part of his work at KDAB, but also his free work. So it's kind of, the edge is blurry, but KDAB as a company that kind of started from KDE is a huge contributor still.
And a very appreciated one.
Thank you. So I'm going to see if we have more online questions, but if you have a question, that'd be like kind of, the last call now. So maybe it'd be interesting, with how did you as a community deal with the challenges that came with 2020 and being mostly remote, and how, how this has shaped your contribution and how to, KDE KDE is working now more remotely than it did before that, maybe.
Yeah. I don't think KDE works more remotely now than it before, because it has always been a community that's been spread out over the whole world, basically, with hotspots in Germany, in Brazil, in India. But the pandemic, of course, forced us to not have our in-person conference and instead do that online. We, for quite some time, didn't have sprints, so our smaller developer contributor meetings. And some of them went online, but it's just not the same thing as getting people together in the same room. So one of the things we had some years ago, for example, was someone in Switzerland, in a small town in the Alps called Randa, who had a family connection to someone who had a huge old youth hostel. And he would invite KDE contributors there for a week, 5 days, to hack on stuff in the middle of nowhere. It's amazing, and I wish we would still do that. Highly recommend it. But anyway, so besides those in-person meetings, I don't think it changed that much in terms of how we interacted with each other. I think it did change a bit. The motivation, maybe even to contribute to KDE, in that I think some people, including myself, saw contributing to KDE and Wikidata and other open projects as a bit of a escape, and as a, hey, here I can do something meaningfully to not go insane at home. So yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Okay. There's one question on Wayland and KDE, as you had a slide on that. This was one of your goals. Is this now like the default, or just that, like, was it about like adding support for it?
The goal was about making a lot of changes in preparation for Wayland.
Okay.
So work in progress, I would say, but getting there. And people are using Wayland in their day-to-day work now. Yeah, but kinks to be ironed out.
All right. Thank you very much. That was a very interesting keynote and question session. So.
Thank you very much, everyone.